the two of you ever used the voice in your real life?
Yes. Eat your broccoli.
Yeah.
So at New York Comic Con, you mentioned that family love was a bit of an oxymoron for Tula and Valya. What did you mean by that? Can you expand a little bit more?
I think like any sibling relationship, it's very complicated and they love each other very much, but that's not straightforward in any way. Valya has always been incredibly dominating and forceful and willful, and Tula's always had to be the kind of pleaser, mopper-upper of trying to parent her parents and parent her sister, and it's been very damaging. But also as adults, as the age we are now, they have a lot of mutual terrible history together, very, very deep secrets that they have to keep, and they have to keep together to safeguard that.
And when it comes down to it, you can't tear yourself away. That's the thing, when it's called love, but what is that love that can involve so much anger and yet an inability to walk away from it?
Valya and Tula's great-grandfather is sort of seen as a coward and a deserter by the whole universe. How much does that haunt them on their journeys?
I think it's one of the things that propels the whole drama, because Valya particularly is obsessed by it and convinced that it is a lie, and that, in fact, their great-grandfather made a great act of sacrifice and prevented a genocide. And it was interpreted as an act of betrayal, and they have been damaged by that ever since. Yeah, so it's like a historical grievance, which is, as we know now from the movies, plays out for at least 10,000 years.
So what about Dune Prophecy's story made it the right next story for the Dune universe?
Look, I think that there are many stories that we could have gone to, but I do think that there's something just so exciting about the Bene Gesserit and figuring out where did they start, because they're so powerful, they're so intriguing, they're so mysterious, they're having this massive impact, but you really don't know how they work. It's funny, I've been saying, but like every Dune fan I know, like at any age, who've interfaced with any of the Dune, whether it's the Ynez films or the David Lynch films or the books, or everyone wants to know more about the Bene Gesserit. So it's really fun to be peeling back the layers.
You were saying we've kind of seen the Bene Gesserit like in the shadows, in the books, in the movies. We kind of get a sense of them, but not maybe like a full-blown look at them. So do you think we kind of get to see the Bene Gesserit unleashed in this series?
I think so, and I think that I think what's great about them is they're so interesting, and they do have so many complex layers, and then every individual sister has a relationship to them, so it's not obvious just because you're a sister or because you're a member of the organization you're going to act any given way. They weirdly keep their mystique, even as you peel back the layers. You're like, hi, there's more to know. They're endlessly kind of intriguing.
Right now, the Emperor's power seems to come from name recognition and maybe tenuous control of spice. What's it like being the Emperor at this stage of Dune's world?
It's always nice playing the Emperor of the universe, because in terms of Predator, you're top of the chain, But what's fascinating about him, obviously, is that he doesn't really feel like that. I think inside he's paranoid and unsure of himself, and that makes him a little bit more interesting, I think, than your average dictator, emperor, king, or whatever.
Absolutely. Do you think he really has true power yet at this stage of the game?
I certainly think he thinks he does, but obviously what we learn is the power of the sisterhood is such that actually you question who's in control of what's going on. And the fact that he's constantly at war with the houses in order to maintain his superiority, that I don't know if that affords him the confidence of having the power. I don't think so. I think it's a constant struggle.
The marriage between Javicco and Natalya was a politically powerful one. But what is the relationship like between them at its heart?
I think it's really interesting, where we meet them in episode 1. It feels like, although it was an arranged marriage, it was one where there was love, certainly for Natalya. So, you see a marriage, where they worked as a team, where they obviously no longer work as a team. And for Natalya, that's really due to his over-reliance on the sisterhood. It's like a bit like, the Romanovs, where there's this kind of Rasputin-like influence that's come in between her and her husband and has completely emasculated her husband. So, yeah, you see a marriage that is in trouble, I guess, which is interesting.
Aside from sort of her personal feelings for the sisterhood, does she have any specific reason that she really doesn't like or trust them? Or is
of course. I think, in terms of what we're introduced to, the sisterhood have completely emasculated her husband's power. They have completely intervened in this partnership that was part of the deal when they married. They have sidelined her, and they're now about to potentially do exactly the same and destroy her relationship with her daughter. So, Natalya has to tread very carefully. But I think, we really see a woman who is pushed into a corner. Her back is up against the wall, and she really has to find a way of regaining control. And so, yeah, her feelings about the sisterhood are deeply personal.
Desmond Hart is an original character in Dune's universe. How fun was it to act/create a character that wasn't from the lore?
It's good. There's not as much pressure, and it gives you, as an actor, a lot of freedom to make it your own. And luckily, it was written amazingly, and is a very intriguing character to me, and it's fun to play. Got a lot of flaws.
Yeah, it's always fun to write for a character that is a riddle within a riddle. There's a question of whether he's touched maybe a Messiah-like figure, kind of presents himself as sort of a Rasputin-like figure in the imperial court. Kind of there's that vibe that kind of exists through Dune. And I think that he is sort of also the embodiment of moral ambiguity. You don't know, good, bad, what's going on there.
There's also this new figure, this charismatic, powerful man named Desmond Hart, and Valya and Desmond kind of go toe-to-toe in the first couple of episodes, but how do you think these two see each other, and where do their journeys take them together?
He's the one person who really worries her because she can't outmaneuver him. For some reason, she keeps trying to, and it keeps not working. So there is an enigma wrapped in a riddle that she can't get to the bottom of. As the series proceeds, we begin to see the discovery of what that is throws like a grenade into everything.
Mark, how do you think Javicco sees his two children, and what are his relationships like with them?
Well, he adores Ynez, and he's in pieces that she has to marry this preposterously young man at the beginning of the first episode, which is just surreal. I mean, we got used to the idea, but every now and again I'd turn around and go, okay, that's a really freaky idea. So he adores her, and he's just really sad at the possibility that he's going to lose her, although he does think that the sisterhood is perhaps a good thing for her to become involved with. And Constantine, he's just disappointed in. I mean, Constantine just seems to play his instruments and, get off with whoever he can. And he's a party boy, and he's a little bit disappointed in that. Although later in the series, he's very proud to offer him command of a fleet that is off doing something useful out in the world. But that's largely as a result of you learn who Constantine's mother is, and I can't actually go into what that is. That's something that I think happens in the later episodes. But it's gorgeously complicated.
How do you think Natalya feels about Constantine, since he is the illegitimate son of the emperor?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, and I guess we haven't really had the opportunity to explore that necessarily so much so far. But I think you'll see as the episodes evolve and certain storylines are revealed, which obviously I can't go into, that does add a layer of complexity. And I like this portrait of a kind of fusional family. I think that feels very contemporary and very modern and very relatable.
So, Chris, you're the only Atreides character we're chatting here with today. What's it like for you and Keiran to be representing this noble line?
Yeah, it's obviously, Atreides is such a big part of the Duniverse, and it's such a big family. What's really interesting about this, and it was great to work with Alison on establishing where the Atreides family is at this moment. It's nowhere near what we've seen in the movies later on,
Yeah.
So being able to go in with a different point of view, focusing on the backstory of how Keiran got to where he's got to and why he's got there, that was really interesting. And I think some of the backstory, the more people learn about the Atreides from now, will definitely inform things for the future.
So all three of you are playing characters original to Dune's world. What's it like to play a character that doesn't have a lore counterpart?
It's interesting, we're lucky that the books that precede where our story's being told, like the Sisterhood kind of trilogy right there's a lot of backstory in terms of our family and what might influence our character going forward. So we're able to get into that, and Alison done such a good job of helping us guide through that, and then a lot of it's right there in the script.
Yeah, I think you get given a lot of freedom, which is nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, Alison was we kind of got given like a Bible at the beginning of a bunch of information, which I think helped us with that.
Yeah, and just so many conversations with her as well in terms of backstory and yeah, just really fun creating these new characters with.
You're right on the freedom as well, being able to create something new that's not tied down to anything was a lot of fun.
How do you describe the relationship between Ynez and Constantine?
They're each other's close, like they're so close, they're each other's rocks, and they're going through this life together as, they know exactly how each other feels because they are living this very secluded royal life, and it comes with privilege and power and also, wealth and privilege and all of those things, but it also comes with a darker side. Like they don't have a lot of friends or people around them that they can trust because of their position. So having each other means everything to them.
Yeah.
And
I think they have unconditional love for each other.
Yeah.
And I guess in this sort of world, there's not a lot of people that they can trust, and they're aware it's a game of snakes and ladders, and they're going through the same human experience of growing up with all of those dark sides and the wealth and the temptations and all of that. And there's no one else really that can sympathize with that. So I think to each other, they're the only two people that can completely understand what they're going through.
So for Ynez, she really seems like she's sort of has power, but is also caught between all these powers that want to use her, the sisterhood, the throne. How does she sort of balance that tension?
she's not seeing it as being used, you know, the part with the sisterhood, you know, because she feels very seen by Kasha. Mm-hmm. And so for her, it's empowering for her being able to go there and study. It's like what she wants, you know, because she looks up to these women so much. So she's like, okay, I'm the heir to the Golden Lion throne. I'm going to be the future ruler one day. I want to learn these abilities. And if I go to the school, I will learn how to be strong, powerful, and in control. And then I will be a great leader, you know. So for her, she feels, she doesn't see all of that when we meet her in the show.
How would you say both your characters feel about being part of the sisterhood?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think I've been asked that yet.
No, that is a good question.
How do they feel? Well, I think Lila was born there. It's the only thing that she's like ever known. She's never known a different life, and I feel like she's a bit jealous of the sisters who come in knowing exactly where they came from, and they already know who they are, and I feel like she's still trying to figure that out and come to terms with the fact that she doesn't know who her ancestors are. So I think she feels a little bit of resentment maybe from being born there, but I think that means she's really like loyal to the sisterhood.
I think for Sister Theo, it's well, the sisterhood is a place of refuge, and it's a place where she turned when she had nowhere else. You know, Mother Superior, Emily's character, took her in and brought her into the sisterhood. And so I feel like this is a place where she can prove herself and people can appreciate like how brilliant she thinks she is. And she is.
So as you mentioned, Lila was born in the sisterhood, but can you tease anything that she might discover that she maybe knows about her lineage or background?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's always been a big question for Lila where she comes from. You know, as far as she's concerned, she's basically an orphan. And she, confides in Olivia's character, Tula, a lot for that motherly figure. But I do think it's still something that Lila wants to go to great lengths to figure out. And yeah, I think there's a big decision that she makes in the show that kind of lends itself to that as well.
Mm-hmm. The sisterhood kind of demands this total allegiance. How do you think Lila and Theodosia feel about giving it to them?
I think, well, for Theo, I think it's definitely, if Valya says this is what you need to do, she's doing it. And she is like, I will follow you to the end of the earth, is her kind of attitude, I think, to Valya, because of the fact that she saved her, in a way.
I think for Lila, she's kind of been like indoctrinated from a really young age with the ideology of the sisterhood. And I think she fully believes it wholeheartedly. She believes in sisterhood above all. She believes in the mission. And I think there is a moment in the show where for the first time, she kind of questions everything she's ever believed in. And, she's kind of forced to do that. And yeah, so I think that's a really big moment for Lila because yeah, this is all she's ever known and trusted. So, yeah, I think for her it's a big deal. She's never felt, anything different.
And for Lila specifically, she's so empathic and kind of kind. But the sisterhood are often very removed from their feelings and personal emotions. Is there a tension there for her despite this indoctrination?
Definitely. I feel like she isn't... I feel like Valya probably assumes that Lila isn't tough enough or that she can't disconnect from her emotions to actually be useful for the sisterhood or to succeed. But I don't think that Lila sees that as a problem. I think she sees that as her unique way or her unique attribute. That a lot of the sisters,
unique selling point.
It's her USP that a lot of the sisters, like Theo, to Lila, it seems like they lack the kind of empathy that she has.
How do you think that Valya's drive to sort of bring back the name of House Harkonnen conflicts or works with her loyalties to the sisterhood?
She has all this rage, and I think it's the sisterhood when Mother Rakella sees her and goes, I see you, and you're really special. Come, it's like that. It's being recruited by a charismatic leader who goes, you're amazing, you have special powers. You're going to change the world. Come with me. And when you're a young person who needs validation and is very, very powerful, that's your moment. That's your golden ticket to set on a path of, very dangerous decision making. I don't think that answered the question,
but it's a great answer as well. Meanwhile, Tula is a very obedient sister to Valya. But do you think she wants to break away from that at all? Or is she sort of happy to sort of follow her sister's lead?
It's such a complicated answer. And I've seen it in my own family with my sister and me then, and all around the older sister, that you want them there to protect you. You can hide behind them when you're small, but also resent them massively for always speaking first and speaking for you. And when Tula is left to take over while Valya's away, it's her dream come true, and it absolutely terrifies her at the same time. And to have Barbara's character, snapping at her heels all the time, going, Valya wouldn't have done it like that. Yeah.
And for Tula, how do her loyalties to her sister and her sisterhood come into clashing, or do they?
I think she is uncomfortably experimenting with saying, now I get to do it the way I get to run this place the way I think it should be run.
And
I make the decisions now, but she does it with great bluster, and I think underneath she massively doubts herself.
Mm-hmm. Does she think she can run the sisterhood better than her sister?
I think that's that underlying lack of confidence in herself. There's something that happens later on where you see she has done the most unthinkable thing because she doesn't believe in her own ability to care for anybody.
The relationship is tested in a way that is truly, it's unspeakable, really. Yeah.
Well, I'll have to look out for that.
Make sure you stick with it to episode 6.
Right. And so for those who are already huge fans of the Dune universe, or the Duniverse, as we like to call it at Nerdist, what do you think the biggest appeal of Dune prophecy will be?
I hope it has something for everybody. And I don't mean that in a sort of diluted sense, but, you know, I do think there's like different levels of pleasure. And I think that's one of the greatness of Dune and the Duniverse. It's like, on the one hand, you have this level that's like, it's asking philosophical questions. It's looking at how power works. It's, you know, making us think about what does it mean to have charismatic leaders, and what are the stories we're telling, and what do we choose to believe in, and I could go on. And on the other hand, it's about a young girl who has been shafted in her own mind, who feels denied of really a birthright, who has ambition, and wants to play a role, and what happens when she meets the sisterhood and kind of rises to power in the sisterhood. And then you just have these are all the people who are whispering in the ears of power, but you also have a really dynamic story about politics, which is also a family story.
It looks like Theo and Princess Ynez might come to form a bond, and they, you know, maybe have such different backgrounds for both of them, but maybe a shared connection, a desire to succeed in the sisterhood. Can you hint a bit about what that relationship will look like throughout the show?
Theo gets chosen to kind of, and she meets Princess Ynez first out of the sisters, and it's like, I think Theo has this idea about Princess Ynez. You know, she's a princess. She's gonna, you know, she's going to get things handed to her. She doesn't have to work for it. And it's a very different backgrounds. But I think when she first meets her, she immediately sees something in her that goes, oh, you're not like what I thought a princess was like, you know, and we know that Ynez isn't.
So both of you play original characters in Dune's world. What was it like to play a character that didn't have kind of a lore counterpart to look to?
Freeing.
Yeah,
right?
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
It just feels there's less like pressure to be committed to someone's like already created idea of something, and I felt like it was more collaborative as well. I mean, I had conversations with Alison about who I felt Lila was, and it was like just a really beautiful thing to be able to trust yourself and not have to maybe defer to something that was written, I don't know, years ago, and you can't really talk to the creator of that thing. So I think it was quite like a privilege to get to play someone who doesn't exist yet. And also it's quite fun to be the first, iteration of it.
And to create a character that now is part of the Dune universe, you know, that's an honor.
The Duniverse.
The Duniverse. Yes.
What is one new aspect of the Dune universe, the Duniverse, that you think this series explores that we haven't yet really seen on screen?
You know, I think that the
young kid training, I think.
What's that?
The kids getting trained.
Yeah, the idea of like what's it like to become a sister, which later becomes the Bene Gesserit. I think it's also kind of fun to find out where the Harkonnens came from. You know, everyone kind of, you know, gives them a lot of grief, but you know, it's really kind of tragic origins. You know what I mean? And to kind of reveal that is really kind of, I mean, juicy, as you said. I mean, I think people who know Dune well will really appreciate to see that.
Frank Herbert once said that charismatic leaders ought to come with a warning label on their forehead.
Yes. Maybe
dangerous to your health. And Desmond is kind of labeled as charismatic in like his core description. So how dangerous?
I think I was labelled before I played it, though.
Yeah. You know, I think what's interesting about Desmond is that, you know, he presents in the beginning as sort of maybe our show's villain, you know what I mean? And he does some villainous stuff throughout, some really kind of cruel and ruthless stuff. But he's also got this thing of like, you know, he doesn't believe in control. He doesn't believe in anyone, any organization, any entity that's out there to kind of, you know, control people and control the fate. So that's an interesting thing, you know what I mean?
The voice really at its heart is when you sort of understand someone and know what to say to them to get them to do what you want. Have the two of you ever used the voice in your real life?
Yes. Eat your broccoli.
Yeah. Well, something I found that was very funny because, I'm an actor and I have been told that when I do scary, it's really scary. So I only in extreme circumstances, I got out full scary for my kids. Nothing, not bothered. And then their friends come over to play. And so the kind of stakes have been ratcheted up very high. And if something bad's going on, I use scary voice. The children would cry. They'd cry. Like the friends who came over would go, "Oh my God, your mom is so terrifying." And I was like, my own kids, they couldn't give a damn. Couldn't give a damn.
Come on, I would love to have the voice. Wouldn't you like to have the voice?
Oh, the voice would be good.
Stand up.
Yeah.
Sit down.
I've probably tried to be like looking at someone being like, "Are you telling me the truth?" But I don't know if I succeeded, but I think we've all tried to like read someone a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've probably used it unsuccessfully on my kids.
I feel like personally, like it's not quite the voice, but like I feel like I can talk my way out of most arguments. And I feel like if you like make people think that things are like their ideas.
Yes, that's a good one.
And then they're more likely to agree with you. But
so
actually,
Jade's just a master manipulator, is what we're discovering.
Born for this role.
Yeah.
It would come in so handy, wouldn't it? For parking spaces or generally in meetings or no, I couldn't possibly profess to something like that. But I think it's a really interesting exploration of someone was asking me yesterday about monsters and, the voice it's like an exploration of, what is a monster? What are we tackling with the voice? The monster is perhaps fear itself. And also, obviously there's incredibly strong symbolism in the voice because this is also a series about women finding their voice.
Do you feel you've ever used the voice on someone in your real life?
No. But I respect, maybe with my children.
Yes.
You have a mom voice that's a bit conjuring all the moms of all the generations who've come before you. So in that regard, maybe.
Amazing. Okay, well, that's all the time we have today. And thank you so much.